Patton's Cutting Room. I'm Brad Talinsky with Backstory, and we're live streaming with GuitarWorld.com. And for those of you out there in the live streaming world that might not be familiar with our guests, you're in for a real treat. For much of their careers, Larry Campbell and Teresa Williams have worked with many of the giants of American music, Bob Dylan, Levon Helm, Emmylou Harris, and countless others. And we're here to sort of celebrate a new chapter in their career where they're coming out front, and they've just recorded a terrific new record called Contraband Love. And we're going to be talking to them about that. And then afterwards, you got to stick around because they're going to play some songs for us. And Teresa's going to sing great, and Larry's going to play some incredible guitar, and we're going to have a good time. So with that, we're going to bring out Larry and Teresa and chat for a bit and talk about Contraband Love. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Have guitar, will travel.
I feel like Oprah.
Yeah. I feel like
interview.
Oprah. Sort of. So both of you guys have had super interesting careers before this album, playing with all sorts of people, like I talked about in the intro. And what I was wondering first, as starters, is, Larry, you're a New York guy.
Born and raised in Manhattan.
Yeah. How did you get involved with all this sort of folk and country-oriented roots music?
The big bang for me, as it was for anyone my age that's playing music now, was February 9th, 1964 on the Ed Sullivan Show. Guess what happened that night? That was, yeah. The Beatles, all of a sudden, it was literally the Big Bang that were from whence the universe expanded. For my generation, you can't discount that. But up until then, there was always music in my house. My parents were constantly playing records over and over, all day long, all the time, and it was a big variety of stuff. But a lot of it was like Jimmy Rogers and the Carter Family and the folk musicians of the time, and that stuff was always in the back of my head. And after seeing the Beatles and that whole movement started, and I was convinced I was going to start playing music. The lure of the music from that was born in the South of the United States was I couldn't avoid it. It was blues, gospel, R&B, bluegrass, country music, New Orleans music. All that stuff had a pull on me that I was, and up in New York here, the closest we could get commercially was Hee Haw on TV or the Beverly Hillbillies, with Flatt and Scruggs playing the music, but I did everything I could to find these records and devour it.
People sort of forget that New York was also, oddly enough, such a hotbed for folk music. You think about it as all concrete and buildings, but probably for your generation, you were looking around and guys like Bob Dylan were playing here and a lot of bluegrass was playing here. I mean, did that have an effect on you as well?
Absolutely. I spent most weekends at the Fillmore East, and the variety of music you heard there was, it was everything from loud, booming, psychedelic rock and roll to groups like the Staple Singers or Porter's Popular Preachers, and then Doc Watson down uptown at Carnegie Hall, or
Can't forget Doc.
yeah, right, or Pete Seeger at Madison Square Garden, or Bill Monroe at NYU, or all this stuff was around. You just had to seek it out.
Yeah, yeah. Teresa, so conversely, how did a girl from Tennessee end up in New York City doing what you were doing? What was that journey?
Well, I'd always done music, and it's the reverse. We weren't getting the New York people so much. We were doing the kind of music that he was trying to seek out, and we didn't spend money on records really in our household. There might have been just a very, very few. We made our own music after supper, yeah, and at church, and that was just, music is just a big part, in Tennessee. It's just the wallpaper of your life. And actually, Daddy would play with a little group when I was a little kid running wild. My cousin is still here from Tennessee. They used to live in the house where he would go and play with the group, and when it was just an old house that they weren't living there at the time. And yeah, just a lot of music everywhere. Daddy would play some Peter, Paul, and Mary stuff a little bit, but it was mostly Jimmy Rogers, Hank Williams, and we were getting Porter Wagner and Dolly, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, and all that on TV on Saturday evenings. So
it sounds like paradise. So why did you come to New York?
Well, I took the music for granted. Seriously, I took it for granted because I just don't ever remember not singing in public. And I hop, skipped, jumped the music industry and went to school for theater, and my family was like, "Who are you? What planet did you fall from?" No, I mean, nobody. It was nowhere around that anybody wanted to go into acting, or even heard of such a thing. I don't even know. It was like I just dropped. But I would end up getting cast, and I did go through school for that. So the advisor said, "Well, you have to go to New York." And I was like, "I don't want to go to New York. I don't want to leave home." And they said, "Well, you have to." And I ended up getting cast. I thought I would go to New York and do Shakespeare, and I ended up doing like mountain women who could play guitar, chink a little on a mandolin. That's what I ended up getting cast as. So we just kind of verged it over into this now.
And very early on, Larry, you played with the legendary Happy and Artie Traum. These guys were super important because they also, their instructional books also sort of were able to pass on this kind of music to a lot of people. What was that experience like for you, and what impact did that have on your guitar playing?
It was incredible. I went to California when I was, 17 or 18. Was out there for a while, got with a band, ended up living in Jackson, Mississippi through the 70s, came back to New York in the late 70s, and while I was in California, I met John Harold, who was with the Greenbrier Boys way back then, and it was kind of a hero of mine, We hooked up again when I came back to New York in the late 70s, and he was living in Woodstock. He took me up there and introduced me to Happy and Artie, and to Bill Keith and Jim Rooney and Eric Anderson and John Sebastian and all these guys up there who, they were all heroes for me. And
yeah, if you guys out there in live stream land aren't familiar with these names, you should definitely look up for some hot licks, really.
Yeah, and pretty quickly I found myself in this community and started playing in the Woodstock Mountain Review, which was a band of all these guys. When they had nothing else to do, we'd get together and do a quick tour with all of us together. And I get to hear Artie play every night, I get to hear Happy play every day. And Bill Keith, who's one of the musicians I most revere, he was a banjo player that just expanded the repertoire of that instrument like nobody's business, And these guys were around, they were available, they were very warm and friendly and generous, the opportunity to make music with these people just completely expanded my horizons.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time in music where it was sort of like that. It was like people just wanted to share what they knew. They wanted to pass on the music, and we're sort of welcoming. Okay, that probably goes on today too, but it was especially true, I think, back then.
Yeah, it was, and one thing I've always found in Woodstock, and especially when we started partnering up with Levon, was the communal spirit of making music together and sharing it, and all of us being in this thing together. That's been there all the time, and that's just a wonderful way to do it.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but I want to first talk for a while about your new record, fantastic new record, called Contraband Love. It's terrific. This is your second record together, that's correct? How is this one different than your first one?
Well, hopefully it's a progression.
Yeah.
As far as the material and the performance and the gelling of what Teresa and I do, hopefully. That's what, if things are going right, then this is just going further and a little deeper than the first one, but I produced this record, and I've completely lost objectivity about this thing now. It's out there for everyone else to judge now, and I don't even know how to think about it anymore.
Yeah. Well, I've listened to it, and it's been noted out there that it feels a little bit more darker and maybe a little more personal than the first record. And Larry, I know on some of it you're exploring some personal issues, not only for yourself but of friends, of drug addiction, some of the darker things. Was it difficult for you to sort of open up and reveal?
I don't know if it was difficult. Once it was done and I realized what I had done, that was a little off-putting, because my, I had, when I was younger, I had problems, and I've never quite reconciled all that. And Teresa has this theory, which I completely agree with, that over the past 2 years we've been, well, you tell him, Teresa. I mean, it's
an observation, watching him, the stuff he was bringing to me that he had written, to me seemed to be brought on by all of the stuff we'd been watching go down with our really family friends, just rock bottom stuff with their kids, trying to pull their kids up, keep them from totally sinking, just being lost to life. One of my friends died while we were in the recording process, and I've had tragedy back in my life, as did my mother, as did her mother. And then just to watch these kids come on and start going into it. And then we have other family friends' kids who are approaching or are at the age where you're like, how much do you tell them? What do you tell them, if anything, to try to save them from that precipice? And it's traumatic to watch, somebody try to save the little child that you've watched grow up. This beautiful child that took that turn for we don't know what reason.
And she brought up the notion that subconsciously this stuff was all I was reacting to all this, and my writing, what I ended up writing was sort of some kind of catharsis for what I went through at that age, and which I mean, it's something it happened. You know, I had drug issues when I was younger, and dealt with
Really
addiction.
young.
Yeah, and dealt
Sadly.
in and out of addiction for quite some time. But you know, that's way in the past now, and
But it's important to talk about this stuff. I mean, if you can't have your artists be honest
Right.
about it, then
Right.
then who can
And
you
look,
go to?
and look,
you know?
music pulled him out of it.
Right.
I mean, that the will to at least to hear what I've heard him say about it, and I just can't state enough how important it is to give kids the option of music, because if it saves one or two per school, it's worth it to me. Not every kid is cut out to be the cookie cutter school curriculum kid, and if they never go into music, but it just gives them that inner resource of some place to put their frustrations and their happiness or their sadness, or just, I mean, it was that way for me. I would be stalking through the house just furious about something and plunk down at the piano and just work it out. You know, my mother still does that to this day.
Yeah.
It's such an inner resource. And they say it wires up the brain for better learning on other subjects. So, you know, I'm surprised the government isn't requiring every kid to have music.
You know, you two are married, and I was wondering whether it's easier to share that personal stuff, you know, or is it more difficult because sometimes it's difficult when you're under the same roof,
I think you create quiet rooms, silent rooms that neither of you go into, like by a mutual, unspoken agreement.
Well, you know, I think it's hard for anybody to appear vulnerable to some degree, even when you're in a close relationship. You know, I mean, did you find that
course.
knowing that you're writing these words, knowing that Teresa was going to be singing them? I mean, did that weigh on your brain at all, or is it just
no? That was the cherry on the cake for me, was knowing that if I can do my job and turn this into a good song, that I've got a wonderful voice to convey it.
But
You know,
some of the
and-
stuff
and-
seemed like he wrote it after we had an argument the day before.
well?
And then I'm like, I'm not singing that every night
Well,
for the next how many years?
Well,
But I am. That's how that works out.
Well,
I ain't saying nothing about that.
I'm not saying nothing either.
They're like, but as I like to say, I'm so self-absorbed, I think they're all about me. So, and then I find out the next day it has nothing to do with me.
You know, in sort of the great folk tradition, you guys do a couple of cover songs on the record, and they're really cool, like Carl Perkins' song "Turn Around" and Bessie Smith. You guys must know like a million songs. I mean, is it hard to pick the songs that you're going to cover? I mean, do you?
Narrow it down.
How do you narrow?
No,
How,
some of them jump out of you, and some of the rest of the material begs you to do that one with that other materials.
Yeah. Well,
Tell them, Mr. Producer Man.
Specifically, "Turnaround." You know, that was. I always loved that song. It's just a kind of primitive country song, and it was on Carl Perkins' first record, and it had this thing about it that, and I suggested that Teresa sing it one time, and she did, and we altered it a little bit, and it just I just love the way she sings it, and I love singing it with her, and I never get tired of it, you know, and then she found the Bessie Smith tune, "My Sweeter Went Away," and we
yeah, let's hear it for Bessie.
Yeah, the first time I heard that song, I have to do that song. I just loved it.
and we worked it out and started playing it with Levon, and that
And with the 5 horns,
yeah,
that
with the
was
horns
fabulous.
and,
Oh my goodness.
and it
Spoiled for life.
and it turned into its own thing, you know. It turned into not an emulation of Bessie Smith and the Bessie
'Cause
Smith
who
era,
could?
you know. But it turned into this other thing when we did it in that band, you know. And then my job, since now we wanted to do it on our own, was to turn it into another thing again, which, the approach was, rather than the horns, I sort of emulated the horns with a resonator guitar as a trombone and a mandolin as a saxophone and the fiddle as a trumpet, so it's sort of a horn arrangement played on these string instruments, and it's just fun.
So the record, like a lot of the new songs, are, they have a very cool contemporary feel, but you guys still, again, the roots are sort of always there. And one of my favorite songs, I think it was off the last record, called "Everybody Loves You." Like, that sounds like that could have come out of the 20s. I mean, is it
Very cool.
do you like the idea of trying to somehow capture the feel of that older music in your newer music? Is that important to you?
It all starts there, and then, like that song in particular, I was teaching a class at Yorma's guitar camp one year, and
The great Jorma Kaukonen. Yeah.
Yorma Kaukonen at Fur Peace Ranch, and it was I think it was Blind Blake tunes that I was teaching, and I had delved back into the whole Blind Blake repertoire, and somehow this guitar riff and chord progression, it's nothing that Blake played, but it evolved out of what he does, filtered through me, and so it started there, but I think where it ended up is not it's not so much of that era as a sort of kind of a gumbo of that plus other influences that I've had as a guitar player, and then so the music came pretty quickly, but then I had to think of something to write about in it, and lyrically, I was thinking about people that we've known that have had great success, and that success altered what you loved about this person, and that's something you got to be cautious of, and it's I not to be pedantic or anything, but
You've probably seen a bit of that.
yeah. And then there are those who completely avoid that too. So.
And I'm not making this transition at all to create any implications or anything, but you sang and worked a lot with the great Emmylou Harris.
Well, she's been on a lot of stuff. Anytime I get to hang with Emmylou, I'm in. She calls and I say, "Let me hop, skip, jump." Yeah, we adore her and
Yeah.
always have.
Yeah.
And she's just a lot of fun to hang out with and really fun to sing with. And we're doing her benefit this Christmas in Washington, I think.
The Hamilton. At
Yeah,
the Hamilton,
yeah.
for her dog charity.
Yeah.
What's sort of your takeaway from working with somebody like her from a musical level?
Anything that she's involved with, it just elevates the project, and that's one thing, just of admiration. But you know what's inspiring is she shows up and just sings for. She's all over she's on everything. She's all over the place, singing with everybody. On every record you can imagine, you'll hear her, and she just loves the music, and she loves the front porch, back porch, feel of just making music. She's still so passionate about it after all these years of just working her patookie off. She just she loves it,
Yeah.
and I just love seeing that. The true. It's not about career, and she just loves the music,
Yeah.
and that's the bottom that sums the whole thing up, doesn't it?
Well, you sing, fabulous lead vocals. We'll hear Teresa a little later, and you guys harmonize great. What's a secret to you is for singing with another person or singing great harmony? Is there a
I love, I've said it's better than sex, drugs, and rock and roll, harmony. Singing harmony is a very, very intimate thing, my friends. It's very intimate. How much closer could you really be than your voice? Because your whole soul comes out with your voice. Your emotion, it rides out on that voice, and I just love it. On this project, I feel like Larry's doing most of the harmonies typically.
yeah?
But yeah,
But you have to be able to sort of not imitate the person, but you have to get really close with them, like you said, in order to do it.
Yeah, you have to feel. Yeah, and sometimes with harmony, I think for me in the studio, some of the best things that came out with Levon's stuff, I just didn't think too hard and just because he would elicit the best of you musically. Levon he just did. I've said many times he was true north with music.
Right.
And you could just feel safe there working with. He made a very safe, creative, and expected everybody to be creative and bring something to the table. And I just found a few times like when maybe we had 4 women, 3 to 4 women doing backgrounds, to just let it like come out of somewhere and not think about it too much. And now I listen back still and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I did that. Where'd that come from?
Isn't that nice?
Yeah. Same with writing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah.
Larry, you worked with Bob Dylan, and everybody's always got 10 million questions about Bob. But you played in his live band, and there's always all these myths about like how he'll change arrangements or call songs at the last minute, or how did you deal with that, or is that been overblown?
That's overblown from my experience.
Yeah.
During that time, before every tour, we'd spend a lot of time rehearsing and rearranging the songs from the previous tour in that rehearsal. But once we got them rearranged, they'd pretty much stay that way, at least for that tour.
But tell about your first rehearsal.
Yeah, the first time when I first went down to play with Bob, and before the first tour, we spent 3 days rehearsing, maybe 3 or 4, and played mostly old rock and roll and country tunes. And then went on the tour and started playing his tunes. So a bunch of them I had never played before. Some I'd never heard before, and you're up there doing it, And there was that kind of sense of anarchy was always floating in the wings somewhere, And occasionally it would be full blown on stage, but for the most part, once something was rearranged, even at sound check the same day, we might rearrange something, and it would stay that way for the show.
Well, I don't know. Somehow, even though people say, "Wow, how could he do that?" It makes sense because he's working with different musicians.
Right.
Everybody's going to have a different take, and if he's being a true musician himself, he's going to allow you to have your voice in that.
And one thing I always admired about Bob was that you can never accuse him of resting on his as a guy who just plays the oldies,
Yeah.
He's constantly reinventing everything.
I just had Mike Stern on the stage a couple days ago, who played guitar with Miles Davis, and those guys, they don't like to stay in one place.
No.
The geniuses, they like to move ahead,
yeah,
right? I saw your band play a couple of times. You playing with Bob, and I was sort of blown away by some of the sort of like Leonard Skinner, like 3 guitar stuff, and I just wondered how arranged those moments were, or did you just punk rock it?
it was kind of 50-50. You know, some of it would be completely arranged, and some of it would just be, we knew this empty space was coming, and let's see what happens here, you know, in the song. You know, or a tune like Summer Days, Summer Nights from the Love and Theft album. That was, you know, Bob asked, Bob gave Charlie and I this recording of Jimmy Rushing. I think it was maybe Pete Johnson on piano, and he asked if I would take emulate what the right hand was playing, and Charlie would emulate what the left hand of the piano was playing, and that's how we came up with the intro for that song, and that part that precedes the solos and the tunes, you know, and so those kind of things would be defined arrangements, and then but then you know, sometimes you just take off from there. Anything could happen.
Just a couple more, and then we want to hear you guys play. But what do you admire about each other from a musical perspective?
Everything.
Smooth, Larry.
Very
smooth. What do I admire about Larry musically? Everything. I admire that it's a, I can't pronounce this correctly, the French raison d'etre.
Yes,
It's
that's
really.
not bad.
I think that it has been, since he first discovered it, I think that keeps pulling him forward. And as Yorma says, you know, we don't retire. What, am I going to retire to play more guitar? So I think that's Larry. And his focus, his ability to just focus with it. And he's up practicing some instrument before I even think about waking up every morning. And he plays so many instruments. My mother says, you have to stop bragging on your husband. It's tacky and people don't like it. But you know, it's impressive. He plays so many instruments that he has to keep up that level of skill on each instrument. And you would think that today that he could just sail into a performance and feel fine about it, but that he just keeps practicing and striving for the next goal. And I admire that.
And for me, it's her unavoidable honesty in her delivery.
It's the highest compliment.
She's got, and Levon had this too, where there's no distance between who she is and what she does. It's just, when you're hearing her sing, when you're watching her sing, when she's on stage, she's not trying to do anything. You know, it's just she's being her and giving it to you.
Don't make me cry.
Well, that's awesome. So I guess we're going to take a minute or two, and you guys are going to pick up your guitars and do a couple songs. We're going to get a feel for that chemistry and that artistry. I want to say, you know, you guys will hear you'll hear Larry play the guitar, but in addition to Contraband Love, you definitely need to pick up for the Guitar World audience.
I agree.
You need to pick up Rooftops. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a killer
It is, if I do
record of
say.
acoustic fiddle songs. I think he's going to give us one of those tonight. But anyways, we're going to take a break and get set up and be right back. Sorry, I thought I was getting cut off. We're going to get to we have a little more time here to get some
Excellent.
questions from the audience. Sorry.
I will quickly throw in that those unspoken agreements of not in a couple's life and not going into certain quiet rooms in your. I will say that when you do touch toes in those rooms, you get the most deep intimacy of your entire relationship. Just throwing that out there.
Okay.
It's scary stuff.
Scary
but
stuff.
Yeah.
Good to know,
Yeah.
especially for the dudes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over here. This gentleman's
Yes.
going to come and bring a mic out.
Larry and Teresa, love the new album.
Thank you.
Okay.
Contraband
Play it
Love.
as much as I can. In the car, I just put the sound as loud as I can. It just goes right through me. Mike, I'm curious about each of you. What is your favorite song on the album?
Oh,
Oh,
ooh. You know, what day is today?
yeah.
Um,
It's like that.
Yeah, right now, the last time I put the record on, I was most pleased with the title song, Contraband Love, only because I, again, I can't be objective about it because I wrote the song and recorded it and did the arrangement. But when last time I'd had some distance and I put it on, I listened to it, I can honestly say that I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish with that song. So that's a success to me, you know. So right now, that's my favorite song. But
I'm really glad we got My Sweetie on record.
Yeah.
I just, the first time I heard that, I was like, no, she didn't do that. It was just so, didn't say which, she didn't say what. I just love that. But live, I really enjoyed doing Hit and Run Driver because, like Larry said, I could do windmills on that one.
yeah.
Oh, I just love it. It's fun. And I guess I was going to say Contraband Love first, and then you said it. So, yeah. It's a deep, dark one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more, and then
oh,
we have to.
there's a-
We're going to get some play in here.
Hey,
Oh,
dude.
sorry.
Maybe we can do two.
Hey,
Mark.
you guys have played with a lot of great people in the past. Are there any artists you sorry never got an opportunity to play with, or are there existing ones now that you'd still like an opportunity to play with?
Yes.
And can you bring up
McCartney.
to Jamaica on Monday?
Paul
in
McCartney.
January.
Paul McCartney. That's the one donut I'm still reaching for on the carousel here. You know. And it almost happened. I was just leaving on a tour with Dylan, and I got a call from Arif Martin, who was producing a song that Paul was either demoing or putting on a record in New York that day. He needed an acoustic guitar player. Could I come down and do it? And I was just going on my way to the airport to start a tour with Bob, and so that opportunity came with, but it might happen again. Who knows?
For me, you know what? I have to say Levon. For decades, he was my artistic touchstone as an actor and as a singer and musician. And I never believed I would meet him, much less work with him. I'm sure there are others out there, but I have to say that, yeah.
But you did work with him.
I can't help it.
Yeah. And,
Okay. Thank you,
well,
guys.
Dewey's got a
Glenn,
question
can
here.
we just
Yeah,
do one
one
more
more.
quick?
Yeah.
Sure.
I do.
Hi, how are you? One of the great songs on the new album is the collaboration you did with
William Bell.
With William Bell.
Yeah.
My wife loves that. She's a big R&B fan. How did that? Is there a story behind how that collaboration?
William had done.
Ramble.
Yeah, he'd come and play the Ramble up at Levon's, and it was just, we hit it off great. You know, the guy's fantastic. And I had started this song. I had the music and a verse and a chorus, and unwittingly, even before I met William, I started writing this song inspired by William Bell. You know, just by his whole body of work and who he was, and you know, I've been a fan since the '70s of this guy, and then it's one of those happy coincidences. His manager, Charles Dreby, called me and asked if I'd be interested in coming down to Atlanta and writing a few tunes with William, because he was getting ready to do a record. And I said, yeah, man, you know. And I went down, I played him what I had of this song, and he said, come on, let's do it. And he helped me finish the words, and it was, it's just one of those great opportunities.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
Yes,
those
all right.
questions. Let's get you set up here and let's
Okay.
hear some music.
Okay.